Okay, and it's 6:02, so we'll get started. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us this evening. I am Dr. Lauren Rudolph, and with me as co-moderator, I have Dr. Giselle Aerni, who you may have met last month. She is the founder of Madam Athlete. So, welcome to the third lecture in the Early Career Blueprint series. This series is brought to you by the Women in Leadership Lead Group, and it was originally designed to be geared more towards women. However, really now it is for everyone because these topics are they're relevant to everyone. So it's open to everyone, and we're glad to see all of you here this evening. Again, one more reminder, this webinar will be recorded, but I will stop the recording at the end of the main lecture to allow for some candid discussion and networking afterwards. So I'm going to hand off to Giselle so she can introduce our speaker for the evening.
Hey, I'm so excited to be here. I get to introduce Dr. Caitlyn Mooney. She is a primary care sports medicine physician in San Antonio, Texas. She completed her pediatrics residency at the Medical University of South Carolina and her sports medicine fellowship at Case Western University Hospital's Rainbow Babies and Children's Hospital in Cleveland. Dr. Mooney currently does primary care sports medicine out of the ortho department at UT Health San Antonio. Additionally, she is co-director for the medical school's second-year course on musculoskeletal medicine. Dr. Mooney is a team physician for the University of Texas San Antonio and also provides event coverage for things like steeplechase, figure skating, triathlons, and bike races. Dr. Mooney helped to create this very series that you're watching right now, the AMSSM Early Career Blueprint series, and I'm honored to turn it over to her to kick us off for tonight's session.
Thank you, Giselle. So I wanted to start with, for everybody who hasn't been here, so our goal is that these would be topics that are really heavy hitting for early career sports medicine physicians. And this one, we're actually also having some little polls through Poll Everywhere. So if you want to log in, and now we can, my name is Caitlyn Mooney 561. That way it can be up on your phone so that when we actually get to those slides, you'll be ready. If you're not familiar with Poll Everywhere, it's just a way that you can either do multiple choice or free response little polling that will all show up. I think that these will be anonymous if I did them correctly, but if not, we'll figure that out too. I don't think it should be anything that you feel uncomfortable posting. So this is our mentoring and building your network session. So this is all about how to find mentors, be mentors, and kind of build your own network to advance your career. So let's see if I can advance my slide. Let's see. There we go. So what is networking? So I always think about networking as trying to build a web where I am getting my support system. So for networking, it includes relationships within your field, relationships in related fields, just anybody you think could be helpful for your career. This can include formal mentors, coaches, and sponsors, as well as other less formal relationships. It also includes fostering those relationships, because it's not just about finding the person. You really have to keep a relationship alive, similar with friendships. And then it also will be talking about how to look for these people, how to maintain these relationships. But some of the reasons why this is important is that these people can help you find new jobs, find people to work on projects with. They can also help you with your paperwork and recommendations to get promotions. So why is one of the most fundamental reasons networking is important? So the majority of available jobs are never posted. So they come through having a network that will alert you to a job or recommend you for a job. And just thinking off the top of my head, I don't think I have had some job offers from jobs that were posted, but all of my jobs so far have come from non-posted jobs. So where can you network? So one of the most important places, and one that's coming up, will be conferences. So you can find people in your in your niche at conferences. You can also just find them working on projects in organizations. So if I work on X committee, somebody who I work closely with might then recommend me for something different. I've had that happen several times. Also, visiting other practices can be a great way to expand your practice. Joining organizations, whether they're medical organizations or sporting organizations, or even something totally unrelated to your field, sometimes can be important. Giving lectures at local events, social networks, social events, even your neighborhood is great for some people to do networking. I've met people through mountain biking that are in community organizations that have been helpful for our free clinic. You just never really know where you're going to run into somebody that might be helpful, or that you can help them out. So it's always a two-way street. Let's see. Okay. So one quick thought. We all know that networking is important. I don't think I'm telling you anything new. Although I think some people think, oh, well, I can get by without it. And that's probably because we all avoid networking in some way, because it's sometimes uncomfortable. I know I've given, I've told this story before, but I used to be very, very quiet when I was in high school and college. And so when I went into sports medicine, I knew it was going to be a competitive field. So I said, you know, how do I meet people when I'm so quiet? And I actually wrote down goals of number of people I would meet at conferences while I was a resident, and looked at the program beforehand to see who I was targeting, so that I was actually trying to network while I was there. Now people tell me, well, you're good at that. You go to those events because you're good at them. But I just want everybody to know that anybody can be good at this in a way that they can get results. It doesn't have to be a natural or something that you always felt comfortable doing for you to be able to do it. So if you go on the poll everywhere, did it start? Let me see. Let's see.
Can you
put the link in the chat, Caitlin?
Yeah.
Or I can. But...
Usually it activates when you go to the slide, which I'm not sure if it did. If you go to poll everywhere / Caitlyn Mooney backslash Caitlyn Mooney 561, I can see them on my screen. Somehow it activated on my laptop without activating on our screen. So do you want me to read some of these out loud? Are you all able to hear me pretty good? Yeah. Okay, so we got answers that are on my laptop that I will read out because for some reason they're not coming onto our screen today. So some people say it makes them feel uncomfortable because it feels transactional, artificial. People are unsure of themselves. Let's see. Fear. It kind of puts the words into common words together. So let's see. People are shy. A lot of people said awkward. Feels awkward. That's our big, if you guys can see that, that's our big central feeling here. So I think we've come to that. And I think if anyone was at our last one, we kind of addressed the transactional feeling about it, is that sometimes if you think about it as not something just for me or selling myself, but a way to that it's mutually beneficial in that you're sharing what you're interested in, and then if they're interested in something similar, you can have you can collaborate and do things. So trying not to put it as in I'm just selling myself, I'm a salesman for myself, but actually being like, well, I'm passionate about this and I want to share my passion with other people can be really helpful for that awkward or transactional feeling. What about you, Lauren and Giselle? Any other thoughts about that, these feelings?
I think the awkward is like so common. And I think that one of the tricky things is like, no, you don't practice this in the real world or like in school, right? You just sort of, those are the people you sat next to. And so that's who you talk to. And so it's just a skill like anything else. And so any new skill that you try to take on, it might feel awkward at first. Like you're not great at it. It's not comfortable. It's different. It's weird. You have to get used to it. And so Caitlyn's story of, okay, I'm going to make myself go do this and just practice it and just literally have the only goal to practice and not even the goal to do it really well at first. Like that is totally something to help you get over that awkward stage. Like even for me with the podcast, that was all of a sudden every week I needed to have a new guest on the podcast. And I have been an introverted, shy person. And it was like, all right, time to just talk to strangers. And it was much more awkward at the beginning. And now I just talk to strangers like it's no big deal. And, but it's like 88 episodes in. So that took time, but you got to practice it. So I think it's a skill like anything else.
I think you highlighted something really great there too, is that the inertia is really, once you start moving, you start to know more people and it feels less awkward. So it's like the coefficient of friction's reducing as you're moving along. So
yes, that is a very physics nerdy way to say that, which I love, but absolutely, like once you get started and then your network gets bigger and then it's easier to get introduced to new people because you have a network that can then introduce you to the new person. And so there's less of that cold calling and there's more of that warm handoff kind of situation, which is always lovely.
Mm-hmm. So we'll go on to the next, let's see. Oops,
I think I've been thinking a lot about this, like, why do I not like networking, or why does it feel weird? I think there's part of it for me is an element of rejection, like what other people think, which we can talk more about at the end, but just wanted to throw that in there because I was not able to stick it in the poll everywhere.
So next poll is, why do you personally want to work on networking? So I think everybody came here for a reason. So what's important for you either this week or in the future that you want this to be something that you're going to be working on, and why? What is your thing that you want to take away from this? I got 2 answers so far. So we got better job opportunities and to find good mentors and collaborators, jobs, supportive professional network, getting into fellowship and further unlock more opportunities, fellowship and job opportunities. And also that's how you learn about cool things that other people are doing. Collegiality and collaboration, and then fellowships, again, finding a new job and expanding people to collaborate with, find that unadvertised job. So finding mentors and support systems in the field that they're interested in. So a lot of very similar things is why all of us think this is important. So jobs and support networks are the biggest ones. So we just went through a lot of these, but why networking is worth the time and effort, no matter how good you think you are starting out with. No one advances in their career alone. It just would be very difficult. You always need some sort of network. How robust that is might be different for different people. And then leads for collaboration, job leads, advancement, access to opportunities you might not have on your own, people to ask advice of, people who will advocate for you, obtaining specific skills, so finding a coach for something very specific, and then guidance on particular projects and feedback. So how can we build a network and identify who we want to be in our network? I think, like I said, I kind of think about this as a web. So that's why I picked that picture from before. You have different people for different roles. And you also have to have a web that's small enough that you can maintain it, but be big enough for what you need it for. So some formal types of members of your network might be a formal mentor. We kind of think of that as either a traditional horizontal, so somebody at your same level can be your mentor, or vertical, so above you can be your mentor, usually in a similar field, who can offer guidance. A lot of these in academic medicine can be formal, so you are assigned a mentor at your job or your fellowship or your residency. Although informal ones or ones that you seek out and make formal are also possibilities. These should be someone you trust and respect, who's also interested in your career. And these are, I think a lot of times we think about a little bit more long-term. These people can help you set goals, but it's also important that you guys have the same, you have a discussion about what your expectation of if that relationship is, how often you're meeting, what you want out of them, so that you get the most out of that relationship. And these people are going to provide us advice and guidance. If you look up all these terms, different people have different definitions. So these are just kind of the way I think about it. And we can discuss this a little bit with Giselle and Lauren when I'm done with this. But other things could be coaching. This is usually through a specific process or question where you get a coach for a specific issue. Like maybe it's your QI project or something like that. It's usually someone helping you determine like a course for a specific problem. And then sponsorship, these are the people who talk about you to others. So sponsors are usually have a pretty good social capital within your field. They're influential, and they're going to be the people who talk about you and recommend you when you aren't in the room. So these people are important, but they might not be those people that you always go to for help either, but these are the people who are pretty influential but are also interested in your career advancement. What do you guys think, Giselle and Lauren? Do you have other definitions or other ways you think about these things?
I think this is great. And these are those, like she said, those formal members of your network, but you also have a huge informal network of your friends and colleagues and all these things, which I'm sure we'll talk more about. But I think it's really beneficial to have all three of these things, the mentor and the sponsor and the coach. I think coach is a newer thing that people are looking into, right? Mentors and sponsors we've heard about for a long time, but having a coach to say, hey, I need help figuring out how to network, or it's usually like, I have this, like she said, I have a specific situation, need to figure out how to manage my career, whether I, get a new job, do I quit, do I stay, like, right? A coach, somebody separate can help out with that. But having mentors and sponsors is incredibly important. And you get to decide who they are. You don't get to make them agree to be your mentor or sponsor, but you don't have to take on a mentor or sponsor that you don't like or that does not suit your mission. I think this is an important piece because oftentimes you'll have somebody who wants to mentor you and wants to sponsor you, but they just don't hear what your career goals are, and they just don't hear what matters to you. And so you can always be happy to have their advice, like always be friendly to them, but you don't need to, it's a two-way street, and you don't need to further, like, you don't need to have them as a mentor just because they have a big name or just because they look good on paper. You're looking for somebody who can actually give you advice and help you with your career and life, who will understand where you're coming from and what matters to you. And so I think that's another important piece about finding mentors, coaches, and sponsors who are going to be a good fit for you and for your career.
Yeah, I don't go too much into detail about like mentorship gone bad. The one thing you want to look into would be, do they have conflicts of interest, or are they just having you do research projects for them that aren't in line with what you want? I haven't heard as much about that happening in sports medicine as much as some really research intensive fields, but it's something to always be aware of when someone's helping you, but you don't feel like you're getting anything out of it. Those can be things to be wary of, and you could even ask for help of how to deal with that. So those are members of our formal network. And then I love this Earth Science Women's Network map of a networking map. I actually have this printed out, and I've written people in myself. Probably for years ago, I found this, and I always go back to it because I think it's the best one I've seen anywhere. So this is for women in earth science, but it shows all the different groups of people that you want around you and all their different roles. So of course, these would vary from being formal to informal or assigned, and you might have different ones of these, different people in these bubbles at different times of your life. But so, you know, our department faculty to sponsor you. I don't think they necessarily have to be in your department, but that's who they put there. People who give you feedback, internal and external to your institution, the people who can help with development. Your emotional support is sometimes always good. Sometimes when you're dealing with something difficult, like a hard job, or you're not sure where you want to go for in your career, like looking at this has been helpful to me. Like, who do I have that I might not have reached out to recently in these little bubbles? So our intellectual community, our safe space, our role models, so those people that you're just like, hey, I want to be like them, but you might not have the most formal relationship with them, but maybe you kind of follow what they're doing. And then who's holding you accountable, and who might have access to opportunities that you don't. So then here they have on their website too, where the kind of their definitions or what they think of why you need these people. So sponsorship are those people who lobby for you. Role models are those behaviors that you want to emulate. So people that you might not even be necessarily talking to, but you want to follow what they're doing because you want to more emulate them in your career. Our safe spaces are those people that you trust, that you can vent to, because those people are important too, because that's not everybody that you're working with. And then our intellectual community that you can bounce ideas off of, who's those emotional support people. So these will be in the slides and we can send these out. So these are a good way to kind of make your own map for yourself. And sometimes you can add people that you already have in your network, or then people that your goal is to have in your network too. And then here's some, their last one is to recognize these people. So, where these people are coming from are office mates, people with coffee breaks, or old grad school buddies. So they're kind of giving you examples of who these people might be, or where you might find these people. So even here, like I kind of talked about hobbies myself, they put running group, you know. So I feel like a lot of people forget about those things when they're thinking about their network. But sometimes, you know, I've been on cycling rides with CEOs of our hospital when I was a resident. You know, you never know who's going to show up at some of those community events or other things that can help you either with you know, your safe space venting, or actually access to opportunities. You can run into people everywhere. So briefly, how do we maintain networking relationships? Because you don't want to just be transactional, one and done. That feels disingenuous. It feels like you're not giving back too. So again, always think about it. Even if you're a fellow or a resident and you feel like there's nothing that you can give someone more senior, if you think about it, there a lot of times when you're having a discussion, you might have some interesting piece of information or interesting background that might actually help me out. Even though if I'm faculty, you might be able to help me with a project. You might have this interesting interest that I've always wanted to have somebody in that field. So I don't want anyone to think it always has to be, even if it's vertical, that it's only one-sided. But to make sure you're maintaining your relationships, you got to pick who you're prioritizing. There's actually was an app that even reminded you how often you wanted to connect with somebody. I think that's now offline, but I'm sure something else will come in its place, because I think it only ceased to exist in like February 2022. So I was kind of looking for it, but it went offline. You want to have regular contact and check in with them, but you determine the frequency, like how often you want to think you should need to stay in touch with this person. Plan get-togethers can be a helpful way. So at AMSSM, you know, you usually have a get-together with your fellowship. So that's an informal thing, but it really helps with maintaining relationships. Showing you care, like sending Christmas cards, giving updates about events, and not only talking to them when you have an issue is really important. Social media is a great, easy way to keep in contact, but it probably shouldn't be the only way. Finding ways to help the other person, reassessing periodically whether you are networking at the right frequency with the right people is important. Showing them gratitude. always say thanks, is I think goes a long way. And then know when to back off. If someone's not emailing you back, kind of ghosting you, then they might have some other stuff going on. It doesn't mean they won't ever be there, but probably might not be the best time to keep including them or keep in touch. And then I went through some apps to help maintain professional relationships, so LinkedIn and Cove. There's also business card manager apps where you can like at least take a picture of a business card, or you can say put in the contact information and put how you met the person and where you met the person, so it's a good reminder. You can set calendar reminders now, and you can have regular scheduled meetings. So the biggest thing is just making sure that you are holding yourself accountable for maintaining the relationship. So we were thinking of ways to prep for AMSSM 2022. So our first in-person AMSSM in 2 years. So I guess even longer if you're thinking we haven't met since 2019. So you should prepare your CV before you get there, because say you're going to fellowship fair and you introduce yourself and you really hit it off, you want to go there, then you can just remind yourself to send your CV electronically that night, and you don't have to work on updating it. Prepare your elevator pitch. So we went through the elevator pitch at the last meeting. So it should be a short little introduction to you and kind of what you want that person to know about you, usually 2 to 3 sentences. And you will have a different elevator pitch. Say if you're saying, I want to introduce myself because I'm interested in your fellowship, than if you were trying to introduce yourself to somebody you want to do a research project with. So if you have more than one goal for AMSSM, meeting different people, you might want to draft more than one elevator pitch depending on who you're planning on introducing yourself to. Go through the program, think about who are you interested in meeting? What are your goals of being there? And then always follow up, within a couple of days of when you're introducing yourself, so that you remind them, hey, we met, this is what we talked about. Follow up with anything that you said you're going to follow up with, and go from there. Any recommendations from you guys?
I think this is so great. And for those of you who are looking for fellowships, like having your CV ready is a little more like, you don't need to send it that exact night, right? And don't bring a paper copy. Nobody's carrying those home with them. But having your elevator pitch of who you are, what makes you special, what you're interested in, and especially if you have certain programs tagged that you're like, I want to go check out this XYZ program because of whatever reason, be prepared to say that. To say, hey, I'm Giselle Aerni, I'm family medicine residency, and I am interested in female athlete triad and mental health and athletes. And I know that you have done this research. And so I'm really interested in your program. Could we talk more? Blah. That was like 2 sentences. And the networking goals for AMSSM, obviously this is coming right up. So this is part of why we're talking about it. We're very excited. Have people who do you want to talk to ahead of time? And then kind of a little bit stalk them. That's fine. If they're giving a talk, if they're going to be in a committee meeting, if you catch them in the hall, you're not fully just interrupting whatever conversation they're having in order to say hello. And oftentimes, even just to introduce yourself, after a talk, right? When there's 20 people waiting in line to talk to the lecturer and you get up there, have your 2-sentence elevator pitch and have your I loved your talk about this. I'm interested in doing research on this topic. Would it be okay if I emailed you to talk about this more later after the conference? Right? Because they're doing a billion, they're talking to 20 million people. And if you're just hey, let me not try to take the next 10 minutes of your time because you're tired after your lecture and there's a line of 20 people, but you're just I'm introducing yourself. Here's my face. Can I follow up with you further? Get that yes. And then you email them. You could email them later during that conference, but also the conference is a little bit chaotic. You might be better off waiting until after the conference is over and kind of following up to say hey, I talked to you after your lecture. I'm that fellow who is interested in this. And we talked about this. Here's what I'm thinking. And then go from there. I think that is a really nice option for trying to make those connections with somebody who's speaking, in that specific example. but this is good. We have our brainstorming, how to introduce yourself to a stranger. That's one scenario.
I think before we go into the brainstorming, just to follow up on the preparing your CV, just to reiterate, like, yes, you don't need to necessarily bring a paper copy, but I think preparing your CV prepares your mind. That being said, everyone is a little bit different, but if you have gone through your CV and you have it ready to send out, that's awesome. But then you also have talking points. It gives you confidence in what you've done, things to coordinate or to connect with other people on. And at least for me, it kind of prepares my brain to connect with other people. So, I think it can kind of help with your elevator pitch as well. So I think that's one of the easiest ways to kind of prep for AMSSM is to just work on your CV and
just
have it
remind
ready.
you that you're awesome.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
other people
exactly.
want to know.
Right. Totally.
Yeah. I think other just conference prep things from the networking perspective, like even before we brainstorm here, usually we get this like printout of all the people who are coming to AMSSM, like here's 2,000 names. So one of the things you might do, and Caitlyn mentioned this in like some of the apps, you can go, here's how I met this person. In that printout, like, first of all, look to see who you want to meet. But second of all, if you meet someone, like you sit next to them during a talk and you just casually introduce yourself because you've set a goal to practice that and to just introduce yourself to whoever you're sitting next to at every lecture, then go like, oh, I met Lauren in this lecture where we were sitting and talking about this, and she goes here and she does here, and just like jot yourself a little note. You might not ever want to talk to Lauren again, and that is fine. But at the end of the whole conference, and like, this is being real strategic about it. This is not letting network happen organically. This is like, I am choosing to network. This is this level networking. Then after the conference, like star anyone that you think is super awesome, that you think is in the right geographic area that you want to be in, that has the right connections that you want to have, that is interested in the same research topics, that is interested in this, like whatever you're interested in, that they seemed like, man, this person was awesome and I could talk to them, or man, they might have connections, or like whatever it is, like star those folks. And then now you know who you're following up with, and you've remembered, because a week later, a week will go by and you won't remember 99% of the people you met. You'll remember like 3 people and that's it. But so if you keep track of it as you go, that's a like conscious plan to network tactic.
So I think we went through some of our brainstorming ways of how to introduce yourself to a stranger, but I think that's probably one of the most awkward things that you anticipate doing at a conference is introducing yourself to a stranger. So we figured we could have a little bit of a discussion. I don't think this is a discussion we have to turn off our recording for, but we were just going to go through, I think we already did a little bit what our ideas are for how to introduce yourself to a stranger, and just kind of going through some of your ideas, or maybe even if you feel particularly, sorry, my dog tried to get chicken, particularly something that you're particularly worried about, we can talk through those kind of difficulties too. So I already told everybody that I certainly had difficulty introducing myself to a stranger. I was very, like I said, very quiet. So I just made it very small goals of, or maybe big, of 5 at ACSM when I was a resident. So, and then I picked up people that maybe I wasn't even sure that I wanted for job reasons, but like I had a connection with, that way it would be easier. So I started with people who maybe worked at my college so that I could say, hey, I'm now in sports medicine and you were the doctor there when I was there. And I saw you. Like, as weird as that is, it just made it a little bit easier to start off with and kind of get the ball rolling. So that's kind of some of my ideas about that. Anybody else have any things that they think is particularly hard about this, or ways that they felt worked well when they've tried in the past?
I wanted to also bring up like the buddy system. And this is sort of that like warm handoff versus the cold, like cold call situation. So if you have, and it could be anyone, it could be your co-resident, co-fellow, co-attending, it could be somebody that you have any connection with, and just be like, hey, can we make a plan? My goal for this conference is to network. I feel awkward about it. I feel uncomfortable. I'm anxious about this. Could you introduce me to somebody that I don't know, and just like connect me to some, like any random person? You don't even have to have a specific, but just like connect me to a rando, and I will do the same for you. And we will buddy system this, and like we'll each introduce each other to one new person or two new people. Because oftentimes that warm handoff is great. Like that's such an easier thing. And you still have that third person there in the middle of that conversation to kind of be the buffer. So it's less uncomfortable. And doing this on purpose, and like, just again, that purposefully, I'm setting this as a goal. This is my intention to do this. That can help. So the buddy system is another trick that I think is a little, takes some of the pressure out of things.
I think what I have found is when I find someone where I genuinely, they talk about something, or I hear some connection that I'm actually find just really genuinely very interesting and that I want to talk to. And then I'm talking to them because it's actually interesting, and not that I'm just like, I'm going to talk to you because I feel like I should be talking to you. And so, that's like how I ended up talking to Giselle after one of the talks that she gave a couple of times ago, was like, oh, this is really cool. Let me send you a message, as opposed to like, I must talk to you because I feel like I should talk to you. Yay. And that ended up being something really cool, but it wasn't just like, I feel like I should network with you because someone says I should.
Yeah. And that helps, like, you have a topic of conversation also. So that makes it very
there's
easy.
something interesting to say, and not that it's like those types of conversations I'm fine at, but it's the like when we're all standing around the like food and I'm like, I don't know what any of these people are. And that's the like small chat that I hate.
I think that goes along with why the introducing yourself to a stranger that you don't know if you have anything in common with is the hardest, even though that might be like a fellowship that you want to go to or whatnot. That's one of the reasons I think getting involved in the committees is so helpful, because if you need to interview someone for the newsletter or collaborate on a project, it's so much easier to then introduce yourself and say, hey, we've been emailing about that project, and I just wanted to introduce myself in person, which is why I've always said it's so helpful if you're a fellow or a resident to join a committee and actually be active in that committee, because that really opens so many doors, not just for those individuals that you might be working with, but that person can then introduce you to other people, and you have much more organic relationships when you go to the conferences, because you already know some of those people who can help with warm introductions, or you just start talking about a project that you all worked on together and then someone else might be there. So I think you went right through how some of these introductions can be less awkward if you have some common ground or common project or whatnot. So definitely join the committees. Any other thoughts? Okay, we'll go to, I think this is our last slide, second to last slide before we get to kind of turning off our recording and kind of just talking. So, so at the upcoming meeting, make sure you introduce yourself to us. We're making this kind of a challenge. So, and then take a selfie, and then we can hashtag it on Instagram, Twitter, with both the AMSSM 2022 and then our AMSSM Early Career Blueprint. And then hopefully we're not super intimidating because you already know us from today. And it will give you a reason to come up to us, right? We already know that people might be doing this, so it's not super random. And hopefully that will kind of get your inertia going so that you can keep cruising down the conversations. And then I just wanted to include a few resources. The mentoring website at WashU I thought was really good. And then there's this mentoring guide for academic medicine that is sold on Amazon that goes through very formal mentoring relationships and how to foster those. Might be a little bit detailed, but if you're really interested in that, that's a good book. And let's turn off our recording so we can get to chatting.
So I'll turn off the recording second. I also wanted to just, if people are watching this recorded before AMSSM, I think that it is worth mentioning that everyone is invited to the Instagram, Twitter challenge. And there is, thank you, Caitlin, to put that up again, because that is an easy way to meet people and network, open doors. Okay.
The challenge, I just want to say too, the challenge is meant to be fun. And Caitlin, Lauren, and I have all agreed, like we came up with this idea to do the challenge. So we are sitting here like waiting and excited for you to come introduce yourselves to us. And you'll be like, hey, I saw your networking talk for the Early Career Blueprint and you told me to come up and talk to you. So hi, like, here's my name. Here's who I am. Have your little elevator pitch, practice it. And we will be the friendliest, like excited people to talk to you. And so definitely like truly do this. Like, this is not a photo bomb, sneak attack selfie, like actually introduce yourself and talk to us. And then we will be very excited to connect on social and do this, and it'll be fun.
And hopefully connect you with other people as well.
Yes.